If you could see the bus right now, you would say, what in the... What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the BBU Bus, where today we're going to take a quick look at what you can do to manage temperatures in your off-grid vehicle when you're facing extreme outdoor temperatures. If you are somehow unaware, the Northwest is in the midst of an extreme heat wave. The whole next week is going to be between 108 and 115 degrees, and this is talking like Seattle and Portland and like Mediterranean climate hubs of the West Coast. Usually the climates there are so well regulated by being close to the coast, but somehow right now it's ridiculous. Now, I know there are parts of the country that is kind of routine stuff. However, this isn't normal for up here. So I've had to take some kind of unique measures in the last week or so, carrying forward into the next week to keep my bus somewhat managed. In reality, there's a lot of options that you can do to manage the temperatures in your off-grid vehicle. Some of those options I am not using, which means I have had to take alternate routes to get to other options that is making a difference here in the bus. So let's start going through them, and we'll take a look at what I'm doing and what I'm using here in the BBU bus. Now, obviously, when it's hot outside, the number one thing that you can do is to park in the shade. I've gotten a lot of recommendations from people online and on social medias to move my bus to a shady spot. However, I'm here in a pretty stationary location, and at the place where I am able to park and be hooked up to the grid and be hooked up to water, there really is no spot in the shade. Now, yeah, I can go leave here, drive away, but then I would lose my grid power and I would also lose my water. So right now, when I have work for a whole week and need to rely on that water and that grid power right now to maintain everything else that's going on in here, I can't move to the shade. So if you have the option to move to shade, obviously that's going to be a good go-to. Pull out in the sun, let your solar panels charge up for a little bit, but put that bus or van back in the shade to keep your temperatures cool. A second option that a lot of people have recommended, and that is also a clear no-brainer, is to move areas altogether. Right now, I'm in Yakima, Washington, which, yes, is a relatively dry, sunny, kind of hot climate to begin with. A few hours away, I can get up into the Cascades, where it's probably a good 10 degrees cooler, if not 10 or 15 degrees cooler in the trees. But when it's 115 outside, 15 degrees cooler is still 100 degrees. So that's not going to be a huge difference maker unless I really try to change climate. If I go up into BC, maybe I could find some cooler temps, but that's a day's worth drive away. And like I said, I'm pretty stationary right now. I have a job. I'm based on this location, so that's not really an option for me. So again, if you have that option, get out of there, move somewhere else, drive somewhere where temperatures are more manageable. There are some of you out there that don't have that option, just like me. So let's look at what I have been doing this week that has made a huge difference here in the bus. Now, number one is having some curtains. Letting any sort of sunlight into your vehicle will warm it up no matter what. Whether it's really cold in the winter and you want that to warm up, it'll work. Or if it's hot in the summer and the sun's coming through your windows, it's going to warm up, period. So blocking that light with curtains is a really good start. When it gets to a certain temperature level, these curtains really aren't going to do what you need it to. Right now it's 9 in the morning and it's already above 100 degrees here. Here's the kicker. This side of my bus, the side with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 big windows, faces east. So as soon as the sun rises in the morning at about like 5:50, 6 o'clock, I am in direct sunlight until the sun has passed its peak and is then on the other side of the bus. It's actually about 7 hours of direct sunlight on these windows. That is way too much time in the sun for me to be able to manage the temperatures in here with just these curtains. What some people will do is they'll put a layer of Reflectix in here on the other side of the curtains to kind of bounce that light back outside. However, that still means that sun is hitting your windows, going through your windows into part of your vehicle, and heating the windows themselves. Now, I took a little bit of an extreme measure, and I've been putting Reflectix on the outside of my windows. Effectively, that's the same thing as parking in the shade, blocking the sun from hitting my windows, keeping the sun from getting inside, and it keeps my windows actually as cool as the interior of the bus. Reflectix is some pretty magical stuff. I've had several people respond to my social media posts. If you saw the video on TikTok about what I'm doing with my Reflectix, there's been a couple people that say that doesn't work. Reflectix doesn't work in direct light. Reflectix was designed for that. It's basically bubble wrap sandwiched between two layers of tin foil, right? That way you can use it either way. Both sides will reduce radiant thermal energy. Now, yes, if you put tin foil on a hot pan and touch the tin foil, that just transmits that heat just like that, right? Touching it with something hot transmits that heat into that foil layer. Now, what slows it down is the layer of air bubbles in between. That's kind of how it works a little bit, right? However, when you're dealing with radiant energy, this is energy coming from the sun, infrared and light energy coming from the sun. The tin foil, the shiny reflective layer on the outside of the Reflectix bounces that back outwards rather than absorbing it. Now, my windows are pretty heavily tinted. I did not do that. They came like this. If you have ever been outside on a hot day wearing a dark shirt, or sitting by the pool and you have your phone out, or you walk barefoot on the asphalt during a sunny day, dark things absorb a lot of light. That's why they appear dark to us, because they absorb light rather than reflecting it out. Light objects reflect that light, and that's how we perceive them as lighter objects. Now, the light blue color of my bus does a pretty good job of reflecting a bunch of light. However, the dark tint of my windows absorbs a ton of light energy. So as soon as the sun rises, my windows start to eat up that light energy and store it and pass it on to the inside of the bus. I would wager that even if it's 100 degrees outside, my windows are 120, 130 degrees, considerably hotter than the air. And that is because the dark window capability of absorbing that light. Like my example before, your phone sitting out in the sun, or asphalt on the ground that's in direct sunlight, that is going to be 20, 30, 40 degrees higher than the atmospheric temperature surrounding it. So that is not how those dark objects get hot. It is because they absorb the light energy coming from the sun. Now, putting Reflectix on the outside of the bus eliminates the opportunity for my windows to absorb light from the sun. That is basically what has been happening here. This isn't something that is only for bus livers or van livers. If you're in an apartment and you have poor AC or expensive AC, go get yourself a roll of Reflectix. Tape it together on the edges, make it the size of your window. Even if you put it on the inside and bounce it back out, cool. If you put it on the outside, even better. You're going to keep that sun from coming inside. It is exceptionally hot right now. So I would not go and build my bus so that it's ready to withstand daily 115 degree temperatures. That's just ridiculous. I am in such an extreme situation right now that I've had to do things that you normally wouldn't do on a regular basis or a daily basis. Do I think I will ever find myself in this situation again where it is 115 degrees and I have 12 hours of sun directly on the bus? No. However, I've been able to make this work for now, and I will have a fallback option if I ever find myself in this situation again. Using Reflectix on the outside of my windows is not the only thing that I'm doing right now to try and manage temperatures. I did buy one of those windshield foldable pieces for the front of the bus, and that I don't have on the outside for two reasons. One, my bus is parked facing north, so the amount of time that the sun actually hits the windshield here in the northern hemisphere is relatively slim compared to these side windows. And two, the windshield isn't tinted whatsoever. So light passes through that much easier without being absorbed into the glass itself. And when it passes through, then it hits that reflective layer and then bounces back out. Yes, some temperature is drawn in through the windshield, but relative to what the potential for temperature to be passed through on these dark tinted windows that face directly in the sun is almost negligible. Plus, there's a lot of air barriers between the windshield, then my reflective layer. When that gets warm, there's a big air gap between that and my front curtain. So it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy to heat that big air gap, and then it has to pass through that curtain as well. So the whole front end is fairly well partitioned and pretty good at keeping temperature at bay up there. There's much slimmer margin for error and much quicker temperature bridging through the side of the vehicle here. I don't have any Reflectix on my two tiny windows above the kitchen, and that's because they are two tiny windows. The service area and the actual thermal bridge on that side of the bus is a tenth that of what is over here. So this is clearly the priority. Plus, once the sun passes high point, which is about 1 or 2 p.m. here, and starts to touch those windows, there's only about 3 or 4 hours before the shade of a tree on the west side of the bus actually starts to cover those windows. So the thermal bridge on that side pales in comparison to the thermal bridge on this side. That's why I've prioritized this side of the bus. Now, the last thing that I am doing to keep the temps manageable down here in the bus is that I have plugged in a household portable AC unit to the home at which I'm parked, and that is plugged in all day, and I run that for the majority of the day and the evening. And between my Reflectix on the outside and that AC unit, I'm able to keep it about 75, 76 degrees in here, which is fantastic compared to 110, 115 outside. So I'll take that any day. If you don't have an opportunity to actively cool the air inside your bus, then you're going to want to take some of those other measures. Move to a cooler place, park in the shade, get yourself some method of cooling, whether you're cooling down cloths in your fridge and you're putting them on you, or you're misting yourself, or you get an evaporative cooler. Evaporative coolers really, I have some opinions on those. I'm not going to share those in this video. That's going to come later. If you want to try one out, go for it. Get a cheap one, see if it works. So that covers the quick tips that I am using or I have available, and that I would encourage you to look into if you are struggling managing the temperatures inside your off-grid vehicle conversion, especially right now in these extreme temperature situations. If you're in the Northwest, that's move to some shade. If you can't move to shade, move somewhere else entirely. I know that's probably the least likely option for a lot of you, because a lot of people are kind of tied to their location, or it's expensive to move these things. If I want to go drive 8 hours, that's several $100s just to move, However, if that's what you got to do to get some more control over your temperature situation, then you got to do that. Find shade, move entirely, cover your windows. If you put your Reflectix on the inside, great. That's a good step. Put on the outside, it's going to cut out even more thermal bridging, which I'd encourage you to do. Some people have suggested to me to put a ceramic tint on my windows. That sounds like a great idea. If it really does reflect a huge percentage of sunlight, that would be a more long-term solution. However, I went from last week where things were great to this week where it is unmanageable. So there's not room to say, oh, let me order some tint, let me look up how to tint, let me do a lesson on doing my own tint, or find a tint shop. Like, when you got to do something to control your temperatures immediately, this is fantastic. I spent maybe $30 on my Reflectix and a roll of reflective tape. Done. Easy. Control my thermal bridging on this side of the bus, and it has made a huge difference in here. So those are the 4 things that I would do. Find some shade, move entirely, put some Reflectix on the outside or on the inside, somehow block off your windows, and get yourself some way to cool the air inside your van. If it's an AC unit that you can borrow from someone and plug into the grid, fantastic. If you have to get a swamp cooler or an evaporative cooler, that will go a little ways and it'll help manage the temperatures in your vehicle. That is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Stay cool out there. Do your best to manage your temps, and we'll see you next time here in the BB Bus. Thanks. Bye.